Think about the most secure, highly restricted room you can imagine. Unless you have the right clearance, that heavy door swings completely closed and locks shut, keeping you on the outside. Thousands of years ago, the ancient Israelites faced a similar reality. God wanted to live closely with his people, but a massive barrier kept them apart. This diagram illustrates the problem. That thick, dark line separating the glowing circle, representing God's perfect cleanliness, from the smudged figures of the people, represents human sin. Sin is simply the bad choices and mistakes people make, and it acts like dirt, making it impossible to get close to something completely pure. To bridge this gap temporarily, God gave the people instructions to build a special tent, called the tabernacle, right in the middle of their desert camp. If we zoom in on the deepest part of that tent, we find the ultimate VIP room. The biblical text calls this perfectly square space the most holy place. The security for this room was absolute. A massive, heavily woven curtain blocked the entrance, and no one was allowed to walk inside. Access was granted to only one specific person. God deeply wanted to be near his people, yet under these Old Testament rules, the door to his direct presence remained firmly closed to almost everyone. The single person granted VIP access to step behind that curtain was the high priest, and he was only allowed to do it on one specific day each year. When that day arrived, the rules stated he could never enter empty-handed. Human sin carried a serious cost that had to be accounted for before anyone could survive stepping into God's presence. During this period of history, God allowed the life of an animal to serve as a temporary substitute. The animal's life paid the cost for the people's bad choices. The priest would carry the offering past the thick curtain and present it inside the most holy place, right in front of a sacred golden chest known as the Ark of the Covenant. Because this ritual had to happen every single year, it served as a constant reminder. Sin was a life or death barrier between humans and God, and it required constant, careful attention. There was an underlying flaw with this entire system. It was never meant to be permanent. It was only a physical copy, a temporary picture of a much better plan God was putting together for the future. We can see the problem by looking at this split screen. Relying on animal sacrifices was a lot like washing a white shirt, only for the person wearing it to walk right back outside and get splattered with mud the very next day. As the image shifts to a human figure, we see the core limitation of the old system. The sacrifices could wash away the ceremonial dirt on the outside of a person, but they couldn't reach deep down to wipe away the actual guilt on their conscience. This created an endless, frustrating loop. The priest had to go into the tent, present the offering, and walk back out, knowing he would have to repeat the exact same task next year because the root problem remained. A temporary patch was never going to be enough. To truly clear their conscience and reach God, humanity needed a permanent solution. Jesus arrives to break that endless loop of temporary fixes, stepping into the role of the ultimate perfect high priest. Unlike the priests who came before him, Jesus did not walk into a physical tent built by human hands out of fabric and wood. He bypassed the earthly copy entirely. Jesus entered the true, perfect VIP room, heaven itself, standing directly in the presence of God on our behalf. When he entered, he didn't bring an animal to act as a substitute. Instead, he offered his own life, presenting a gift that was completely unblemished and final. The old system relied on animals, but because Jesus lived a life without mistakes, his sacrifice carried a power that those previous offerings lacked. By presenting himself in the true sanctuary, Jesus reached the root of the problem, cleaning the inner heart where the old ceremonies could never reach. Because this gift reached heaven itself, the cycle of yearly sacrifices came to an end. It never has to be repeated. This timeline illustrates the change. Instead of an endless loop of yearly rituals, the biblical text tells us Jesus made his sacrifice once for all. That single act achieved what centuries of animal sacrifices could not. The thick VIP curtain blocking humanity from God's presence is permanently removed. Because of what Jesus did, our hearts and consciences are wiped completely clean. The heavy burden of the old temporary rules is lifted. The door to God is now wide open. We are free to serve Him with a clear conscience, and we can wait with joy for the day He returns.